Hey guys, so today we'll be covering the topic of producers and consumer. And this is actually a good concept, and I see a lot of YouTube videos. But the problem is that no one knows how to even code it. They will just show that देखो ऐसा ऐसा करना है, ऐसा ऐसा करना हो जाएगा. Again, the whole point of this video is that we are not saying that those guys are wrong, so those implementations are wrong. But the problem is that someone has to go and implement it. If you learn the concept, the very good thing you should do is that you should know how you can implement that in any particular language, right? So let's get started. The problem is actually universal for the producer and consumer. Producer will create the data and put in a buffer. Consumer will take the data from the buffer. And let's understand how this will work. And for this given thing, I am going to assume the worst case possible that there are multiple producers. Sorry. So let's say that there are multiple producers over here, P1 to Pn, and this is a shared buffer. For now, just say that this is an array 1, 2, 3, 4. And there are multiple consumer as well, C1, C2, C3, C4. Okay? So now what will happen over here is that he producer will and one producer will put the data over here. Let's say that क्या बोले इसको item, and let's say that item 1, and consumer will do that. Consumer will see that, oh, there is an item, I will take it, and consumer will just consume it, as simple as that. And after that there will be no given item which is present over here, right? This can happen, or apparently the indexes can be eventually taken care of. Let's not worry about those indexes. Okay, so producer will place a data over the given slot, consumer will consume the data from that given slot. But the problem over here is the synchronization. What if at the same time producer is adding some data, okay, adding some data over here, A, and at the same time, consumer is also waiting on this one, right? And to make the matter worse, let's say that these consumer, right? These consumer, let's say that these are different threads. These are different threads of consumer. And for producer, let's say that these are different threads of producer. Now, what can eventually happen is that once you produce some content, any one of the consumer can attack over here. Any one of the consumer can eventually attack over here and take over this A. And same thing applies for this producer as well. Same thing applies for this producer as well. Many different threads might contest for the zero slot over here. If all the threads are in a running state, they might just see that, hey, zero slot is empty. I'm going to enter some value. I'm going to enter some value. And what might happen is that, let's say that the value they were eventually going to enter was P1 wants to enter 10, it will enter 10. But suddenly P2 also acquires at the same time and modifies the value to 20, right? So eventually what is happening is that this is leading to a race condition. This is leading to a race condition, and that is the goal which we need to understand over here. And the next thing is that what will happen eventually is that let's understand a corner case over here. What is the corner case is that let's say that the buffer is empty, and all the consumer threads are in a running state. What they will see is that hey, the buffer is empty. What should I do? So you have to be answerable for that as well. And same thing is apply for the producer as well. What can happen over here is that the producer might see that, hey, all the given slots are full. There is no given slot which is empty. So that means no one is consuming the elements over here. So I cannot put new elements on this shared buffer. So this is the next problem which we have to take care of, this producer and consumer. That the producer must wait if the buffer is full. So it must wait if the buffer is full. And how it will wait? It will need to have a sync with the consumer threads. And the consumer must wait if the buffer is empty. And this should be done efficiently. Because the problem is that if you keep, let's say that the producer has put all the content over here, and you keep all this thread into a running state, eventually what is going to happen is that you're consuming resources at the end of the day. You're just consuming resources, the CPU resources, right? And that means it is not a very computer efficient solution. So that's why I said that we should not use while true or something like that. So apparently what we are going to do over here is that we are going to use a logs. We are going to use log so that we can ensure that only one thread can access the buffer at a given time. And we are going to use thread to wait for a specific conditions, like if the buffer is not full and to be notified when the condition becomes true. So these are the only things which you need to know for the producer and consumer. And these are some semantics or the semantics or something like the APIs which you need to know to start initializing and playing with the p-threads. So let's get started and understand how we can eventually. I'm trying to code it from scratch. So let's see if I can be able to do that. So first, let me try to include some libraries. So I will just narrate you on the go what I'm eventually gonna do. I'm firstly gonna
do nothing fancy, guys. I'm just gonna create a couple of threads and let's see how this will eventually work out for those threads. So this is there, and these libraries name are memorized because I need these libraries to call some appropriate function. I need this for this to call sleep function. I hope so. This is the right library. And this one you already know, so no explanation required for that. So we need int main function. And the next thing is that we might need a variable number of producer. Number of producer, which is 10 over here. Let's say that. And this is the number of consumer, and let's say that this is also 10 over here, right? And we have defined this producer and consumer over here. Let's go ahead and define some buffer, but note that there might be different thing which might be present in the buffer, right? So let's try to club them together in a single given structure. I'll explain you why. So what might happen, guys, कि तुम लोग ना क्या कर सकते हो कि it's up to you, but we might have some different things. We might have some pthread, let's say mutex t, ठीक है? You can have this, you can have some condition variables, and on the go also explain what are these given condition variables and how they are eventually going to work out. And we will have some shared buffer as well over here, shared buffer. And we need to initialize the size of this buffer as well. So let's say that the size of this given size buffer size is 10, and let's use this value over here, right? And after this point, what we are eventually going to do is that we need to have a lock as well. So let's go and define lock. Let's go and define the condition variable, not empty. This is not empty, and this is not full. Okay, I'll explain you how we are eventually going to use these condition variables over here and who's going to wait over it, which point. Okay, so for basic thing, I'll just start over here. See, there are locks. Okay, we will solve the problem that only one thread can assess this at any given time. One thread will contest for this given lock, and once the lock is acquired, we might start writing it, right? But before also we start writing, what might happen is that the buffer might be in a full state. The buffer might be in a full state. So what we can do is that we can have a variable called condition variable not full for the producer. Okay, not full. So you might think that, hey, this is tricky. Hey, this is tricky. I mean, it's not full. But what does it mean? I mean, just it's a random condition variable just for your safety. So not full will be something this will be waiting on. And who will call, how will it work is like once a consumer, let's say that this producer encounters a state that, hey, the buffer is given full, and then it will go and call this, it will say that I'm going into waiting state for this not full, right? So it will go into waiting state. OS will eventually know that key, hey, there are a couple of threads in the producer section which are going to be waited for this, going to be waited in this not full queue. Just understand that this is a queue, and in this given queue, P1, P2, P3 are in a waiting state right now. Okay, they are in a waiting state. And what might happen is that they might sleep, right? They might sleep, so they will just sleep at this point. And just understand that whenever we call the condition wait, yeah, whenever we call this condition wait, we are also going to release the lock. Because understand one thing, if you have acquired the lock at this point L1, and after acquiring the lock you say that I'm going to sleep state without releasing the lock, what is going to happen? There is no consumer which can effectively pick up this lock and start putting up the elements, consuming the elements. Sorry. So that's why we need to be very careful. So that's why this wait will already take care of this internally. It will, what it will do is that it will just say that, hey, I'm going to release a lock, and after that I'm going to put this given thread into a sleeping state. And after that, any consumer thread will wake up and see that, hey, there's a lot of items to consume from this given buffer. Then from this given buffer, these items will be confused, and at the end, after consumption, it will signal, but it will signal what? It will signal not full. So this not full, it will use this signaling thing. Okay, it will use this signaling con signal, and it will see that, hey dude, listen, all the threads which are waiting on this for this not full, can you please the consumer will tell the OS, hey OS, can you check if there are any threads which are waiting on this not full, and if there are, can you please notify, put them into a running state, can you please notify and put them in a running state. So at this point all the threads will start in a running state, right? But obviously OS will only select one thread. So let's say the P1 got selected for a running state, and now it will might start contesting for the law. But understand, we will have to handle the synchronization, because up till here we have just signaled. After that we have to we have to release the log also. So we release the log at this point. So I'm going to show you in the code how this will eventually look like. And this problem is actually very tricky, guys, very tricky. I mean I will be surprised if I can even code this thing, and that too live. anyways anyways let's start creating some threads. So that's why I have this two things over here. But let's start completing this now यार. इसको ये खाली कोड क्यों रखने का? And there will be insert state, insert, इसको insert बोल देते हैं, and consume, है ना? That put some state and let's put count state. टू सी की देखो क्या होगा ना कि हमें एट द एंड ऑफ द डे चेक करना पड़ेगा कि बफर फुल है कि नहीं, ठीक है? अगर प्रोड्यूसर कंज्यूमर बफर फुल है तो उसका काउंट क्या हो जाएगा, 10 हो जाएगा, और हमें देखना पड़ेगा कि इसको कैसे कंज्यूम कर सकते हैं या तो इंसर्ट कर सकते हैं, मतलब एट द एंड ऑफ द डे दिस काउंटर, दिस इज अ काउंटर वैल्यू फॉर योर सेफ्टी पर्पस. So let's start putting some elements now, ठीक है? So call it produce producer threads, and let's see number of producers we are putting over here is something like this. And when consumer thread, we are number of consumers we are putting like this. And after this point we need to start initializing the, but before that we need to initialize this given structure as well. So let's go ahead and initialize our given structure, and let's call it consumer one st, and let's call it pc. Now pc dot at the initial stage everything will be 0 since there is nothing to consume, and the pc insert will also will point to the 0. Pc dot consume will be equal to 0, and the shared buffer is already initialized, so we don't need to worry about that. And shared buffer is initialized. Yeah, we need to initialize the remaining thing, root mutex in it. We need to initialize the mutex now. We will initialize a log, but this is the pc.logs. Remember that. This is the pc.log, but we have to initialize with what? Null value. So I'll talk about what is the eventually null value. But if you, meanwhile, if you want, guys, you can just quickly explore what is this null value for yourself. I am hoping I am using the correct things. Dot null, and guys, I'm too lazy to type it out. Sometimes typing, copying is more better than you have heard that, right? Sometimes switching is better than reloading. So sometimes copying is better than typing. Just remember that. So now with everything initialized, let's go and talk with our, what do we say, producer, and let's start create some threads. Let's start create, and this will be thread. What is the create wala condition? I think so is correct only. So this is gonna be creating some threads, but I need to be very sharp. Okay, producer dot I इसमें null value pass करेंगे, and इसमें कुछ function pass करना पड़ेगा भाई. Function pass करके we also have to pass the this and the end of this PC. So let's say that he pass किया, and let's say that he define a function producer which we are going to define, and let me type it for you guys. Producer, and let's say that he takes the void arguments at this point. Okay? Same thing I'm going to initialize for this consumer as well. So I'm going to take void consumer, and I'm going to call it consumer only. उसको और क्यों बुलाऊंगा मैं? And after that it's done, and I will do the same thing for the consumer thread also. And let's say that the number of consumer at this point, and this will be consumer thread, and this will be nothing but consumer, and we are done creating the threads. Now we need to join the threads, right? We need to join the threads. So what we can do is that to join the threads, joining क्यों करते हैं? But that at the end of the day सब मिल जाए. At the end of the day, at the end of the day, everything is मिलू जुलू. So right now, I think so. This looks so far so good, and let's say that this returns null and this returns null. I want to see at a certain where I do not want to know if this will compile or not. So let's always, whenever you're doing such things, right? Always it's better that you process the compilation step by step, so that later na debugging तुम्हारे लिए difficult ना हो जाए. So I'm just gonna remove this and see कि if everything compiles well, because I know कि, but let's see. Oh, reducer has no movement. Oh, counter value as well. And what are these? Not full. Not full to define है ना भाई. अच्छा इनिशियलाइज नहीं किया है उसको. इनिशियलाइज तो किया ना. ओ भाई 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 देख रहे हो मिस्टेक्स देख रहे हो मैंने छोटे छोटे मिस्टेक्स. पीसी नॉट एम्प्टी. सॉरी. So इसलिए बोलता हूँ कि always be careful while doing these kind of things, because sometimes you just lose the track of the thoughts. And yeah, at this point I feel कि everything is running up and running, and we can just if you want we can just create a let's leave it later. Create, I'll just write a message for myself only. Create a joint population for the threads. Create it, destroy, and at the end it's always good to clean up. Destroy the threads and clean up. Okay, I mean destroy the threads. nahi, Clean, destroy the threads. Clean up the logs. Okay, this is optional. Usually during the interview, you might not get it eventually. So with this given thing, let's try to start unpacking our producer over here. So let's say we also call our PC over here, and this is nothing but let's first typecast the given arguments to this thing, and let's start checking, guys. Let's start checking, and this will probably execute in a while loop, because we want this thread to be running all the time unless you want to put in a very null state. So अभी क्या होगा ना कि this will contest for the lock. This will try to contest for a lock using this value mutex lock. So that's why I wrote it for myself. Ki sometimes I forget. But it will try to contest for this given lock, and let's say that it requires a lock, but the buffer is full. So what might happen is that the pc dot count equal to the buffer size of that. And at this point, what do you think? What should happen? I should call a pthread. You know, I should call a pthread sorry, cont wait, and it should eventually wait on the. This मैंने इधर explain किया था ना not full के लिए. It should eventually wait on the not full, and at the same time it should also release the log here. But understand this, guys. I want to now give you a very good thing. Okay, now try to understand one thing. If we do this given thing now, if we do an if operation, I'll tell you one tricky thing which can happen over here. ठीक है? There can be one tricky thing that let's say that कि एक random thread आता है. ठीक है. Let's say that अभी क्या मैंने explain किया था कि there will be in this queue, OS will be maintaining a queue who are waiting for this not full, right? These are the people P1, P2, P3 are just waiting in a waiting state. OS will go and wake up one. OS will go and wake up one. Let's say that P1 got woken up. But understand there might be another producer of P4 which might be active as well. है ना? अगर मान लो कि वो producer active है and वो line number 26 पे आ गया. मजे की बात तो ये देखो लाइन नंबर 26 पे आ गया. ठीक है, क्या हुआ कंज्यूमर, मैं फिर से बताऊंगा. कंज्यूमर ने लॉक रिलीज पहले तो नॉट फुल को नोटिफाई किया. ठीक है, कंज्यूमर ने नॉट फुल को नोटिफाई किया कि एक आपने ओएस को बोला कि देखो ओएस गो एंड वेक अप एनी गिवन प्रोड्यूसर, and what you can eventually do is that you can start I will release a lock. But what might happen is that there are two people awake, P4 and P1. P1 was in the queue, but P4 was not in the given queue. P4 was somewhere else, but let's say that it was just at the line number of something. Let me write an if statement. I entered here. Okay. Let's say that the P1 was here. I have entered here. And what might happen is that the funny thing is that if the P1 was false, it would have acquired the lock, and it would have started to write. But what might happen over here is that P4 is got smarter and it acquired the lock, and P1 will say that hey, मेरे को तो मिला ही नहीं, मेरे को तो मिला ही नहीं lock. ठीक है, बट अभी तुम होगा क्या, तुम ये बताओ, ठीक है होगा क्या, आई विल जस्ट टेल यू दैट नाउ। P4 might produce some content। देखो अभी क्या होगा कि कंज्यूमर ने एक स्लॉट एम्प्टी किया, मैं फिर से सिमुलेट कर रहा हूँ वाला एनवायरनमेंट। कंज्यूमर ने गिवन स्लॉट सिमुलेट करेगा एंड कंज्यूमर माइट हैव पुट कंज्यूम वन एलिमेंट। P1 को OS ने वेक किया, P4 was a random running thread, आवारा बच्चा। Now that आवारा बच्चा started to acquire a log before the P1 and P1 ऐसा रुका रह गया। Now I'll tell you what might happen. P1 P4 will say that कि I will just put some content over here. Now the thing is that कि if after this point, if it releases a log, after this point, if P4 releases a log, that means कि P1 का जो होगा, P1 का जो state आ जाएगा, what might happen is that P1 will see that कि hey, the buffer is full, and ये P1 को गलत सिग्नल मिल जाएगा, है ना, P1 को गलत सिग्नल मिल जाएगा, क्योंकि अभी क्या कर रहा था P1 ने तो ऑलरेडी, देखो सीन क्या कि अगर मैं इफ कंडीशन यूज कर रहा हूँ तो मैं एक ऑलरेडी अज्यूम करके चल रहा हूँ कि अगर मेरे को लॉक मिला है, अगर मेरे को कोई इधर इस पॉइंट से उठा रहा है, ठीक है, अगर कोई मेरे को इस पॉइंट से उठा रहा है, तो मतलब बफर एम्प्टी है, बफर में कोई स्पेस है, ऐसा बोलने का मतलब है मेरा, ठीक है। बट हो क्या गया कि बीच में ही P4 आ गया, P4 ने जाके बफर से कुछ एंट्री डाल दिया एंड फिर चला गया, एंड उतने देर में P1 को फिर से वेकअप किया गया, ठीक है। P1 को वेकअप क्यों नहीं करेंगे, क्योंकि देखो P1 अभी एंटर कर जाएगा, ठीक है, P1 अभी इधर था, तो अभी क्या हो गया कि जैसे ही P1 को वेकअप हुआ, ठीक है, P1 भी वेकअप हो गया गलती से, एंड इट ऑटोमेटिकली एंटर्ड ओवर हियर। साउंड्स कंफ्यूजिंग, I will explain it over here again, guys. So what I'm saying is that कि let's say that कि there are a lot of producer threads, right? There is a P1 and there is P4. P1 is woken by OS and P4 is Avara. ठीक है? I will tell you what might happen. So P1 was originally waiting for the conv wait wala in the conv wait part, and this guy was in the printer. But let's say that what happened is here is that P4 started over here, and let's say that this was a state of a buffer. It was initially full, but a consumer now consumed some element and it said, oh, wake the OS up. The OS realized that, hey, I woke up P1, but P4 was faster for some reason. P4 acquired the log, and P4 acquired the log, and it started to put the elements. It started to put the elements, and then it released the log. ठीक है? It released the log. But after this point, the P1 thing will happen. P1 thing will happen. Originally, P1 को उठा गया. See, P1 has been woken up with a false promise that the buffer is now bit of empty. ठीक है, P1 got woken up with a false promise that the buffer has some space. But actually, the buffer does not have space because P4 had acquired the log earlier, and after acquiring the log, it produced some content, put into the buffer, and meanwhile, when P1 woke up, P1 said that, hey, I'm woken up now. I'm start going to put some element. So P1 will end up overwriting at the same slot again, or that there might be race condition. So we need to explicitly handle this case. And how will we handle this? By using the while loop. तो होगा क्या कि ना कि if the P1 was waken up here, it again gonna check in a while loop if the PC count is equal to buffer size. अगर हाँ तो P1 will again go to the sleeping state. अगर हाँ तो P1 will again go to sleeping state and that's how things are gonna continue. Because अगर मैंने if कर दिया ना तो मेरा P1 इधर आ जाएगा at the line number of 32 and then things are going to be catastrophe for me. So that's why you're going to use a while loop. So सेम थिंग अप्लाइज फॉर द, देखो जो चीज प्रोड्यूसर के लिए अप्लाई हो रही है ना वो सेम चीज कंज्यूमर के भी अप्लाई होगी, ये चीज याद रखना तुम लोग, ठीक है। Do not mess up these concepts. So now let's say that we produce some data and let's say कि always produce some same data only यार। So let's see कि क्या कर सकते हैं इसका अभी। हाँ अभी देखो इसका कैसा है कि ये कैसा है, अपने पास पॉइंटर है ना, इसको अभी pc डॉट से रेफर करेंगे हम फिर लोग। तो अभी इसका क्या आ गया, शेड इंसर्ट करेंगे इस डेटा को इधर, ठीक है, इंसर्ट प्लस प्लस कर देंगे। फिर से देखा बल्कि कहते हैं pc डॉट काउंटर बढ़ा देंगे एंड पीसी डॉट, हाँ देखो गलती कहाँ गया, देखो इंसर्ट करना था इस पोजीशन में, तो अभी कैसे करेंगे इंसर्ट, ये देखते हैं शेड बफर की इस पोजीशन पे करें ना भाई, शेड बफर at this given insert. So I'm just going to put an element over here and I'm going to insert, I'm going to increment the counter saying that now there are more elements, and I'm going to further increment the counter saying that the insert have also been uh, insert at this next given position. Okay, other things are not going to be affected over here. And at this point, you can simulate and do some work. Also, you can put a sleep, say that 1 second of sleep to simulate the actual scenario. People do that. We can also do that kind of thing. It's fine. And at this point, again, we are going to wake up a producer. So I'm sorry, not con reads, con signal. So we are going to use a con signal and we're going to say the not, but देखो not full इधर यूज करे थे इसलिए not empty यूज करेंगे. Not empty अभी किसके लिए, वो सेम कॉन्सेप्ट अब तुम लोग रिवर्स में अप्लाई करो. देखो इसमें क्या होता कि नॉट फुल तो प्रोड्यूसर वाले वेट वेट कर रहे थे ना नॉट फुल पे, तो कंज्यूमर वाले पे कौन वेट करेगा, नॉट एम्प्टी. ये बताना ही भूल गया मैं तुम्हें. क्या हो सकता है ना कि ऑल द कंज्यूमर सी दैट कि हे द बफर इज एम्प्टी, बफर इज एम्प्टी. And if the buffer is empty, now we need to eventually handle this case. So to handle this case, what might we might do is that we will wake up the one of the producer thread, and we're gonna wake up one of the producer thread and put this into a waiting state. Put ourselves into a waiting state of not empty. So that's why not empty is used. So not empty is for the consumer. So we're gonna signal the not empty, and if we're gonna pass the lock as well over here. And after this, we're gonna mutex unlock. We're going to perform an unlock operation over here, and we're going to release a lock at this point. So far so good, guys. So far so good. I think so. We are on a good track. And do I want to run it? Do you? If I was sharing my video, I would give you 100% confidence. I do not want to run it. Let's see कि गलती कहाँ सकती है. ठीक है. Because just saying कि I'm just not a perfect photo. देखो यहाँ पे गलती क्या ना, यहाँ पे भी पीसी डॉट शेड बफर आएगा, क्योंकि यहाँ पे हम क्या रेफर करें, पीसी का बफर रेफर करें ना प्रोड्यूसर कंज्यूमर का. तो इसलिए हम लोग पीसी डॉट बफर, पीसी रेफरेंस टू द बफर, एंड वी आर गोइंग टू यूज द इंसर्ट पोजीशन. We're going to insert at this given position, and then we are going to increment the counter, and then we're going to simply simulate the environment, and that's all. Let's see if it runs or not. It will not run. It will not run. Why it will not run? Let's see that. Invalid initializer. Invalid initializer क्यों है भाई तू? I'm going to pass PC over here, and I'm just gonna typecast this to the. I'm going to typecast in function producer. Invalid initializer. Initializer. ये क्या होना चाहिए भाई फिर? Oh, ये पॉइंटर है ना भाई. देखो अभी सही हो जाएगा. अब सही हो जाएगा. पॉइंटर वाला मिस्टेक हो जाता है थोड़ा बहुत. And pthread mutex lock. This is why I do live coding. This is why. Do you mean lock f? मैं lock f कब डिफाइन किया भाई? मैंने lock f नाम की चीज भी नहीं है मेरे पास. Why you do this thing? Let's first delete this and let's see क्या issues हैं. So did you mean lock is undeclared over here? Oh, the lock is present over this point. Ah, so anyways, I have to make the entire changes and ensure that I'm using the right buffer values. So yeah, you see guys, this is how we make mistakes and we forget that all of these logs are present in this structure buffer. I mean, I only decided कि नहीं तो messy हो जाता भाई, इसको pass करना बहुत messy हो जाता, मतलब maintain करना state ना, it becomes too messy. So that's why I thought that it's a pretty good idea that let's put this into a some structure kind of thing. So after this, I think so it should run smoothly. अबे यार pc डॉट कहाँ लिखा मैंने ये? अबे यार कर दिया तो भाई ऐसे ही करता हूँ कि अब चल जाएगा. अभी भी नहीं चल रहा भाई, अभी भी नहीं चल रहा. काउंटर नाम है ना भाई इसका, इसलिए नहीं चल रहा. ठीक है, अब काउंटर है. लेट्स फिक्स दिस मिस्टेक. टू मेनी आर्गुमेंट्स. कॉल सिग्नल का आर्गुमेंट्स क्या था भाई? कॉल सिग्नल का आर्गुमेंट क्या था? ओह, गलत दिखाया क्या मैंने इधर? इस तरह से इतना ही होगा. फिर कौन सी बताओ, लॉक क्यों देना उसमें? लेट्स सी. अबे यार क्या गंदा इंसान हूं मैं. हाँ चल गया भाई, इतने मिस्टेक्स के बाद चल गया. ठीक है, डिबगिंग इसलिए बोलते हैं ना भाई, डिबग इंजीनियर बनो. एंड सेम चीज ना अभी मैं इसके लिए भी कर दूंगा. सेम चीज आई एम गोइंग टू रिपीट ओवर एट दिस पॉइंट. एक बार प्रोड्यूसर बन गया ना भाई, कोई टेंशन नहीं है. सेम चीज अपने को इधर अप्लाई करना है, बट थोड़ा ध्यान से, थोड़ा ध्यान से, क्योंकि इस पर हम कंज्यूम कर रहे हैं. तो कंज्यूम करें तो काउंटर की वैल्यू डिक्रीमेंट करेंगे, याद से ये चीज़ याद रखना। इफ वी आर कंज्यूमिंग वी नीड टू डिक्रीमेंट द वैल्यू ऑफ द काउंटर and we have to signal the not full and we have to release the log not अबे यार not full आना यार। Sometimes live coding is very difficult, guys. I think live coding is pretty very difficult. So eventually, I'm doing the same thing over here. Producer will take some element and it will start consuming the data. But let's start simulating it via this format. The producer will take the data and perform certain operation. But for our given purpose, we do not need to do anything actually. So we can eventually say that कि जो consumer वाला part है ना वो increment कर सकते हैं अपन इधर भी, ठीक है? And we can just sleep for some time basically. We can sleep for some time over here, है ना? To simulate the actual scenario. तो हम क्या कर रहे हैं कि कंज्यूमर का नेक्स्ट इंडेक्स बढ़ा दे रहे हैं और क्योंकि we have already consumed from this part. Let's say that if there was some element here, we would have already consumed from this part and we would like move to the next part for the consumption. ठीक है? So दो पॉइंटर टाइप मेंटेन कर रहे हैं for the consumption and this thing. And yeah, that's यहाँ पे जो भी लिखा है उसको उल्टा कर देना बस। यहाँ पे नॉट फुल पे नॉट अगर देखो अगर यहाँ पे वेटिंग प्रोड्यूसर को has seen that की buffer is full, it's gonna wait and it's gonna wake up on this not full. And after that, the consumer thread is eventually going to wake up. The consumer thread is eventually going to wake up and it's going to check, acquire the log, and going to check the. If this is also not no item is eventually present, it's gonna go into convert condition and we're going to consume some element, we're going to decrement the element and we're going to simulate this by sleeping. So eventually the same thing is going to happen over here is that we are going to put this to we are going to signify that hey that is there any producer thread which is eventually waiting for this given thing, and if yeah OS is going to wake up from the state and gonna be returning the PC log. So yeah, that's all guys. I think so this will also run smoothly. Yeah, this will also run smoothly. But we are not printing anything. So बोलने का मतलब देखो sometimes live coding is not about this thing कि you always need to print something. You can just always chill and code something. That's the point. So at the end of the day सबको join कर देता है pthread dot pthread join. I forget the syntax for the join. Let me quickly इंटरव्यू में देखा ना मैंने ऐसा तो मेरे तो लग जाएंगे like don't you know the pthread join, you know how it uses? If I know to how it uses then probably you would have been giving the job, you know? So इसका धंधा सीख गया मैं कैसे यूज करना सीख रजिस्टर थ्रेड को लेने का आई से और इस बंदा तक क्रॉस कर देने का ऐसे इसको ज्वाइन करने का एंड सेम थिंग अप्लाइज ओवर हियर एज वेल बट इस बार क्या करेंगे नंबर ऑफ कंज्यूमर डाल देने का एंड consumer thread and we are done. Let's delete this comment as well. So one thing I realized from here that I forgot that I was using a structure, then I messed up. I keep doing that these kind of dirty work, so I need to be very careful next time. Yeah. And yeah, once we are done, I think so. We have coded a pretty good line, dude. We have pretty much coded a good line. So yeah, that's all I think so. We can just start and printing some elements over here. So I think so for you guys, right? You might be needing ki kitne different threads. So let's put some thread also. And let's use this self. I think the self वाला part था जो thread ID निकालता था. And what it eventually does is that कि यहाँ पे हम print कर सकते हैं. Print f the thread I am the consumer at this point and I'm going to print my thread ID. I have displayed at this point same thing which I'm going to apply over here as well. And over here also I'm going to put some thread and here also we can have some printer statement with I'm the producer and let's see कि this will work or not. Okay. क्या बोल रहा था भाई इधर? I am the producer. Expect argument of LL देते क्या इसमें मेरे को याद नहीं है मेरे को याद नहीं है stop running the code. I think so L देते थे नहीं यार L भी नहीं था क्या था let me long format for the render. देखो ऐसे छोटी छोटी mistakes I mean I'm just doing for you guys. ऐसा नहीं कि कोई सबको याद रहता है ऐसा scenarios में.
एलडी एलडी है क्या? अच्छी एलडी पुट करके देखते हैं भाई, एलडी पुट करके देखेंगे एंड लेट्स सी। अब भाई 3D प्रिंटिंग हो रहा है भाई, रन तो हो रहा है ना thread? अरे चल नहीं रहा है मेरा? अरे भाई 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 3D प्रिंटिंग हो रहा है कुछ भी। हाँ, मेरे को इधर भी लिखना चाहिए था, आई हैव एंटर्ड हियर, और इधर भी लिखना चाहिए कि योर प्रोड्यूसर and here also I'm gonna do the same thing, but instead of here I'm say that I have entered here consumer. Let's see ki are they even entering? So I think so they are not entering, guys. So probably I might be doing some mistake, which I'm not sure. क्योंकि जब कोडिंग बड़ा हो जाता है तो then we start messing up. So we know that the counter is waiting for the not full. We'll send the not full, and we are eventually going to wait on the condition variable which we have declared over here. And again, after signaling, I'm just going to release a lock and just gonna go. And this is going to be repeating. And okay, okay, it might go in a while loop because I want this thread to be always running. It's a worker thread, so it will always run. And after that, I don't think so. It's gonna be breaking something. Let's use ChatGPT to understand what mistake which happened. इसमें से कि तुम्हारा बहुत ही गंदा कोड है, that's great because there are several mistakes, never wrap them around. Oh भाई, एक तो wrapping नहीं किया भाई, गलती क्या मैंने। ah yeah, so the thing is that we never wrap them around Jesus, but causing me trouble. The sign of a bad coder is like me only. I should have discussed with you. And similarly thing over here is that we need to wrap these things, we need to wrap these things, giving things over here. That's why के बाद इधर ही रैप कर पाई, इधर रैप बना इसका। एंड लेट्स some percentage over here with the buffer size. That's the first mistake which I've done, critical mistakes. And yeah, it's going to actually consume data. You increment the consumer. So yeah, I know the consumer does not consume some data, but eventually, yeah, we can do this, dude. I mean, yeah, he's right. ChatGPT is right that eventually we can put some element over here and start print that value. I mean, that's the worst thing which can happen. Uh, still not working, dude. Still not working. Missing new line. वो सब छोड़ो भाई, न्यू लाइन इज नॉट कोडेबल। हाँ ठीक है भाई, कोडेबल नहीं पता मेरे को। स्लीप इज अननेसेसरी, हाँ ठीक है भाई, सोने दे। We can avoid this. Like we can. भाई चल गया। न्यू लाइन डाल देना भाई, अब चल न्यू लाइन डालते हैं भाई, इसमें सब जगह न्यू लाइन डाल देते हैं ताकि ये देखने में अच्छा लगे आपको। हाँ, ये चीज रैपिंग वाली चीज मैं भूल गया था। रैप अच्छा कर रहा हूँ पर इधर कैसे करना भूल गया, पता नहीं भाई। No, I'm a newbie coder, guys. I'm a newbie coder. I'm just learning. I just passed out from the college. I'm joking, guys. I'm the producer. Uh, so देखो यहाँ पे थ्रेड का कोई भी नंबर आ सकता है यार, मेरे को कुछ परवाह नहीं है। तो eventually this worker thread is going to work like this, right? You see, we have created a multiple producer and multiple consumer, and it works. That's the craziest part. So let me see कि things are as per these or not. So we insert it and increment the counter, right? We increment the counter in both the cases, we after inserting and after consuming, and we take the value and we just print it. But I am mostly interested in this printing part of this. What it eventually print out. I don't want to fool you guys. I have entered here. I have entered here. Okay, producer is not even. Thing is that guys कि कुछ कंज्यूमर खा नहीं रहा है। ये खा क्यों नहीं रहा भाई ये वैल्यू? कुछ तो खाना भाई। हाँ ना। अरे यार लाइव कोडिंग में डिबगिंग कर रहा हूँ। इंटरप्रेटेड लैंग्वेज थोड़ी है लाइक, हम लाइव में डिबगिंग कर रहा हूँ।
Let me ask the chat. I mean, I know a lot of people would be against me, but ठीक है. Inside this now, he's this is right. I mean, we are not sure. Run only once. Okay, this line I would have put outside only, but okay, let's put it over here. That guy is right. I mean, sometimes I blunder, but both the producers have this play fun inside the mutex. Fix move after unlocking the mutex. Sleep for some time. हाँ मतलब उसको तुरंत चला दो ना यार. After unlocking the mutex, let's you just sleep for one time, sometime, because we need to ensure कि तुरंत जाके simulate ना हो जाए ऐसे ही. तुरंत जाके वो फिर से लॉक एक्वायर ना कर ले. So that's why we are using this sleep conditions हो गया. So देखो अभी कंज्यूम कर रहा है, आई कंज्यूम 10, आई कंज्यूम 10. अभी खाना चालू किया ना भाई ने. अभी अच्छा लग रहा है ना कुछ भाई खा रहा है. तो वन मोर थिंग ओवर हियर गाइस, दिस डज नॉट इंश्योर फेयरनेस. फेयरनेस वाला वीडियोस में नेक्स्ट पार्ट पे कवर करूंगा. दिस इज जस्ट अ मल्टीपल प्रोड्यूसर कॉन्सेप्ट. सो या एक्सेप्ट blundering the buffer wala part, I think so I did good. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks. See you.